Hey everyone, Stu here from ParchmentAI. Today we're going to talk about how to generate a background information section. And what's cool about how you go about doing this is it's the same flow for setting up a reasons for referral, behavioral observations, a summary section, anything where paragraphs are flowing from one to the next, where it's a narrative. And we're starting with background information because I've heard from maybe just countless people at this point that they're sinking a ton of time into all these notes and emails and different pieces of information, bringing them in and giving them that structure. So we're going to start off with a sample. We're going to teach the AI that sample of how we like to write, and then we're going to give it new data to see it in action, to see it generating an output that looks like how we write. So what you're seeing right here in the screen is a dashboard for a test account I have, and it has a number of templates. And the system is set up that you can give it different examples of how you write in different situations. So some customers maybe work with geriatric memory patients and also do pediatric autism test cases. And those have very different report writing styles. The information is different, the style of how you write it is different, the recipients may be very different. And so what ParchmentAI actually lets you do is provide writing samples for every type of report that you write so that it can learn how to emulate those different styles. I'll, for this example, create a brand new template so you can kind of see what it's like starting from scratch. You'll notice in the top right, there's Create Template. If we click that, it'll bring you here. And I try to introduce tutorials, instructions throughout the entire tool so that you have this built into the screens as you go through the process. So this explains a little bit as we go through it in the product itself. We'll click Create a New Template here, and you have two choices. You can start from scratch, or you can upload a PDF, maybe like a gold standard or a past report that you really like and you want the AI to learn from. If you're just getting started for the very first time, I actually recommend starting from scratch with an empty template. And that's because you can focus on one specific piece of the report to see value from the AI. My goal is to save you time, and I want you to figure out, is this actually going to help you as quickly as possible? So if you come in with a goal in mind, such as summarizing a specific test score or maybe writing a background information, you might get to see if the AI is going to help, if it has that potential much more quickly. So I'll just go ahead and give this a name, my custom template, and we'll create that template, and that comes in empty. Of course, there's no sections here on the left. You can see that bar is empty. So what you do then is click Add Section in the top left, and this gives you options. Freeform sections are what we need for background information, basically anything that has that narrative where one paragraph is flowing into another paragraph. I'll explain the others in other tutorial videos. So we'll click Freeform for now, and I'll just call this background information. Go ahead and hit the check, and you'll see at the top three tabs. The input data is whatever relevant input data for your client or patient you're going to need to enter for every generation. The AI output is the AI output that was generated for that input. And the training sample, you'll notice, has this exclamation mark, and that's because it doesn't have any example of how to write like you yet for this section in this template. So we'll go down here and we'll hit Let's Get Started at the bottom. And you notice you have this editor, you have this input. This is where you paste in an example of how you like to write this type of content. So I have over here an example of how I write background information sections. And if I just paste that in, now all the text is here. You can hit Analyze and Save in the bottom right. So I'll go ahead and click that. And what that's going to do is it's going to break it down into structure elements and voice elements. Structure elements are what information do you like to talk about in what order? How does it flow? The voice is how do you tone, how do you style your text? So if we click into structure here, you can see its interpretation of your writing. You have family and living context, social and emotional functioning, educational functioning, with all the topics within them. Voice, for example, the phrasing style, the reference style, you can override all of these things. So if the AI's interpretation of how you like to write is not accurate, you can edit these and influence the way that the AI is trying to write like you over time. So now that we have the training sample set up, that little exclamation mark is gone, and we can go back to input data. Having set that up, we don't have to set that up again for this type of template. That'll be saved, and we can reuse that over and over again. Let's go ahead and give it some sample data. I come into that same document over here where I have a transcript example, and this is just between a psychologist and a patient. Just something that I think is really interesting to show how does the AI pull facts and information out of an input, where maybe some things are redundant and said a couple times, maybe in different ways. You don't necessarily want it repeated, you want it boiled down and synergized into coherent sentences. So I'll go ahead and say patient interview transcript. And then just to give you an example, you can also add as many of these input data as you need. So say you also have a PDF of the email from a teacher or school psychologist. So if I hit upload PDF, I can choose that from my local system. And then I can say, yep, analyze that. And that gets pulled in, pulling that whole email in. And you can edit this if you need. But in this way, you can pull in as many data sources as you need that you want to get incorporated into that background information section. So now we'll go ahead and we'll hit Generate AI Output in the top right here. And what that's going to do is there's always reminders when working with AI to double check you are the professional in the room, and AI does not replace you. It's a tool to be used by you. So we work those in throughout the platform. And this can take a second depending on how much information you give it and also how complicated your training samples are. So what I'll do is I'll pause this just so you don't all have to watch me watch the spinner, and we'll be back in just a second. All right, I almost didn't even have to pause that. That was quicker than I even expected this time. So when we're in this screen, you'll notice there's a check mark at the top by AI output, and that's just to tell us that it's done. I'll click back over here just so you can see in the input, this is the same input we gave it, same thing. On the right-hand side here, you'll see the AI's understanding of the input facts. So we gave it all this data from all these different sources, and it came up with facts from that. And it assigned those facts to the different themes based on its understanding of that structure that it took from the template. So if we look on the right here, family and living context, it has all these facts, and it explains also why that fact was matched to that theme, matched with a specific topic within that theme. It matched to a broader context of that theme. And it also has an unassigned bucket. So if you throw a ton of information at it and maybe some of the facts that it took out of the input didn't match with the template that you gave it, didn't really have a place for it to go, it'll throw it into this unassigned bucket, and then you can say, hey, actually I do want this to be in educational functioning. So you can move these around, you can edit these just to make sure that you understand both that the AI is taking the right data, the right facts from your input, and then also controlling where it's going in that generation. So for example, if I move a bunch of these down to educational functioning, I can then regenerate just the family and living context and the educational functioning. Maybe the social emotional functioning generation was perfect, we don't want to touch it. So we do just that, and that's kind of like the scalpel of we're going to go in and just make those fine changes. And now that information, you'll see the educational functioning generation is much longer, and it has that information because we move those facts around. That's a really cool way to be able to move information around. If that works for you, that's fantastic. You can export this data. Just click that button, bring it over to your document, and then paste it in for your background information. You can also go to the next level. We have this Refine with Assistant button at the top of the page. And what this does is it gives you an assisted editing experience. So here, if you like, you can add your own data in, make your own changes, edit as you need, or you can go to the AI on the bottom right there and give it commands. And you can work in tandem with the AI on this document. So my goal is to get you a solid first draft so that you need to do as little editing as possible, but then to give you the flexibility and these advanced features so that you can take it the next step if you need to. So for example, we could say, turn this into concise bullets, just to give you maybe a radical example that would change this pretty drastically. You can then save those commands if you see that you're using them over and over again, and then use those across your team so that the whole team has access to the same sequence of prompts. Similarly to the previous screen, you can export this, and then you can bring it over to here if that's what you'd like. So this is exactly how you would do other sections if you wanted to create a behavioral observations for example, same process. You go in and you create the section. Now you have the section, you give it the training sample, you can tweak those advanced properties, and off you go. Now it knows how to write both your background information and your behavioral observations. Next time you log in, you come into the dashboard, you'll see My Custom Template. You click in and it has these sections ready to go. It's already saved all that editing for you, all those samples. So that's how you write narrative sections, background information, using free-form sections. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. My information will be in the description. Thank you so much for using the tool.